Let's start with one of the universal principles of the Qultura system. The basic, most fundamental principle is the principle and the process. Existence is a principle. Creativity and interaction is a process. This is the basis of all you need to know about anything. This principle and the process. Everything is essentially process. Nothing is permanent and unchanging. Nothing is guaranteed continuity. Change is the only constant in existence. Reality, existence and being all unfold in cohesion and flow with one another. They all emerge, constantly. Therefore life changes from minute to minute. Whenever you use the words what or who to ask a question, you are asking about principle. What is this? Who are you? Who am I? You are using language to point to a totality, something complete in what we call the present moment. Everything else is process and subjected to the dynamic unfolding of reality, existence and being. When you are using the word how in a question, you are asking about process or a process. The principle is always a part of the process, but it is never complete because it is also subject to process. So the principle is only ever one point in a process. The principle and process also tells us something about our internal architecture. What is meant by internal architecture? Well, obviously we have a brain. We also have a mind, or simply mind. Mind is the space between you and everything else. Mind is the space through which we do all our perception, conception, and thinking. It's like the canvas on which a painter paints. It's the blank page on which a writer writes something. It's like the kitchen counter on which you prepare food for cooking. Therefore it is the environment for all your perception, conception and thinking. But we also have a sensory nervous system and sensory perception. So sense is also a major part of our internal architecture together with the brain and mind. All the senses come together in what is known as the felt sense of immediate experience. This is the source of our feelings and also the sensations which make up our experience of life. Sense is also the basis of our intelligence and ability to make connections to other people. Sense is very important. Then you have memory, imagination, and thought. Thinking is a process. A thought is a principle. This is also part of your internal architecture. As you can see on the principle and process meme, the brain, the mind, the senses, in fact everything that is considered physical, together with the mind, is process. You will notice that the principle points to consciousness. There is the focus of conscious attention, the subconscious, conscious awareness, and your individual conscious perspective. Consciousness is the basis of existence, and so consciousness contains everything you know, understand, and are aware of. The Qultura system is designed to liberate you from your social and mental conditioning to become real. It is not designed to lead you anywhere, or offer you anything such as enlightenment. You do not have to seek any enlightenment. You were born with this internal architecture. You are already enlightened as much as you need to be. We will move on to another Qultura universal principle while we understand how this process of social conditioning affects our perception and our thoughts and feelings. The triangular relationship is a universal principle about reality. Let's start with what is known as ultimate reality. Ultimate reality is what is beyond human perception and the human mind. Ultimate reality never changes because it is unknown. But what reality does is that it manifests relative to our perception and mind. This is like walking through a hall of mirrors. You are who you are, but each mirror reflects back a different reflection of you. So it is with reality. There are an infinite number of different manifestations of reality. There are many different levels of reality. But within the context of the triangular relationship in Qultura, there are two main forms of reality. These are actual reality and cultural reality. Let's begin with actual reality. Actual reality normally manifests as the context for existence. Actual reality does not originate from human thinking, human imagination, and is therefore not a concept. A tree is an example of actual reality. Human beings did not invent trees. A tree has actual reality. If a tree exists, then everyone will be able to perceive that tree. Similarly, your body and brain are actual reality. Objectivity is based on actual reality, and only actual reality. Then we have cultural reality. Cultural reality arises out of the human mind, human imagination and human thinking. The key difference is that actual reality is manifest through perception, but cultural reality is manifest through conception, and is thus a concept. There are many examples of cultural reality. Society, God, religion, political beliefs, sciences, philosophy, spirituality, nationality and the ego are all concepts and therefore cultural reality. Your individual reality is made up of both actual reality and cultural reality. So let's look into the ego and social conditioning. The ego is your most basic and immediate form of self. It's the basis for your identity. Social conditioning is designed to direct you to develop an ego. Everyone develops an ego, so you don't get a choice over whether you develop an ego or not. Having an ego is a basic requirement of living in society. Your ego is not who you really are, but it's an image, a metaphor, a belief system and a story, usually attached to a role. Ego is what you are referring to whenever you use words like I or me in a sentence. The issue here is that social conditioning merges the different levels of reality into one and doesn't make a distinction between actual reality and cultural reality. Therefore, to the conditioned mind, there is just reality. This creates a major disruption in your internal architecture and distorts both your perception and perspective. You are taught that many cultural illusions are real when they are not. They are illusions. Such cultural illusions include free will, moral reasoning, control over different things, such as your environment, such as thinking, and such as control over other people in your circumstances. Social conditioning emphasizes thinking, belief and recall memory over perception, sense, and a proper understanding of conception. As a result of social conditioning, you are left with various consequences. You are left with a general sense of discontent, a feeling of isolation, alienation from the world, which may manifest as loneliness or anxiety. You have a disrupted internal architecture because you are encouraged to believe rather than to properly perceive and sense what's going on. So you create additional levels of reality which don't actually exist. You inflate your sense of self through ego and lose connection with your deeper being. You become judgmental both towards yourself and others. So let us move on to the next universal principle in Qultura. This is creative law. Creative law is a much simpler version of natural law. So it is about reincarnation, trauma and karma. Karma is about process bit of physical existence. Karma arises out of trauma and unfolds or emerges just like reality, existence and being. Karma is the process of energy between trauma and equilibrium, balance, cohesion and flow. Therefore, in the same dynamic relationship, karma also arises out of memory through thought and then action. Trauma is force or impact. Karma is action, as in action, reaction, and interaction. For example, if you hit a bell with a hammer, the impact of the hammer on the bell is trauma. The ringing of the bell after being struck is karma. The ringing is louder immediately after impact, and gradually fades into silence. Another example is water. If you drop a stone into water, you get a splash, which is trauma. Then you get waves and ripples, which is karma, until the surface of the water is smooth again, which is equilibrium. Karma is essentially drama, because it is action, reaction and interaction. But in the center of the creative law mean you see the creative cycle with 4 stages: perception, insight, conception and interaction. The point of Qultura is to enable anyone to develop a balanced perspective and to return to being a natural authentic human being. In the Qultura system there are no beliefs, no ideology or methodology to follow. All you have is a methodology, the Qultura methodology, and access to a community through which you create your own Qultura methods. You develop your own Qultura methods based on your life experiences, your perception, and your individual conscious perspective. Please understand that, as a result of social conditioning, you are locked in an invisible prison of beliefs, misconceptions and half-truths. You are coerced and forced into playing a game of real-life Monopoly role-playing through your ego. Just like a real prisoner in a real prison, you have no freedom, because you have to follow the rules. The rules in question is the paradigm of social and cultural beliefs of your society. You cannot be who you really are, and you cannot easily be who you are meant to be or do what you are born to do because you have to be your ego all the time. All social conditioning is based on the illusion of separateness and social divisions. The conditioned mind constantly separates and divides. Male and female, young and old, rich and poor, the church and the state, gay and straight, good and bad, right and wrong, better and worse, have and have not. Separateness. And division is what causes trauma and suffering. Please understand that you were born a complete human being. You are not separate from nature. You are nature in human form. You were born with everything you need for a complete and meaningful life. All the answers you seek in life can be found within you or which come to you naturally through insight. What the conditioned mind perceives as reality is not reality, but a simulation of reality within the framework of the paradigm or pattern of social and cultural beliefs. Just as the reality inside a prison is not the same as the reality in open or free society, the reality we experience in society is not the same as natural or actual reality. It's like we are an imaginary character caught up in a stage play or a movie, or an unfolding dream. Please also keep in mind that reality, like the universe, is under no obligation to make any sense to you. Despite the fact that reality manifests through perception and the mind, you still have to make sense of that reality using sense, sensitivity, and the felt sense of immediate experience. You cannot do this if you are constantly trying to fit the reality into your preconceived model of reality which you hold in memory as a principle or model of authority. The principle in the principle and process only refers to the principle in the present moment, that which has to come to you through sense, not what you recall from memory. Memory is a physical part of your brain, it is not consciousness. You have to find a way of getting past all your preconceived notions and assumptions about reality. This is where we come to another universal principle in the Qultura system. This is primary social interaction. How does this work? You are in terms of actual reality a natural human being. You are a primate. You are a social animal. Therefore you have a very deep innate need for connection to other, to be included in a community, and to feel as you belong to something bigger than you. These are deeply rooted emotional and psychological needs. Without a connection to other in your environment, then how can you realistically expect to find liberation from your invisible prison and social and mental conditioning? How can you expect to receive insight or know what truth is? How will you know when you have rediscovered your own enlightenment and mindfulness? This is where you have to be very careful. Recovering your felt sense of immediate experience, senses and sensitivity requires some degree of insight, as does recovering your ability to perceive reality as it actually is. If you try to do this all by yourself, as most other methods imply, then how do you know that you are making the right steps? How can you be sure that you are free from your social conditioning? How do you know that you are not just creating another more enlightened version of your ego or just creating another alternative form of reality? See, this is the whole issue with following any sort of religion, spiritual belief or path. You can easily get caught up in the illusion of becoming. You do not know how reality, existence and being unfold, because you cannot know until it has happened. If you can perceive a path which extends into the future and you can imagine an outcome in the future, then you are caught up in the illusion of becoming. You are second-guessing reality, existence and being. Nobody else can lead you to any sort of liberation from your social and mental conditioning. They are not you. They do not share your individual conscious perspective. They do not have your collection of memories or karmic process. Understand that there is nobody there to save you from your own illusions of reality. Nobody is smarter than you, even if they describe themselves as a prophet, a yogi, a guru, a maharishi, or whatever. Somebody else's path is not your path, and if you believe that it is, then you are buying into another illusion. But there are two ways of accessing insight, either from your direct experience of life, or through primary social interaction. Primary social interaction is conscious, positive, pleasant, and reaffirming of both reality and truth. This is why Qultura provides access to both a methodology and a community where you can interact with other people freely. Accessing this community can be done online or offline and costs you nothing to be a member. The Qultura community is an empathy-focused, egalitarian, free-thinking community. All you have to do is participate and interact socially with other members. In order to liberate yourself from your past social conditioning, you really do have to really pay attention to your environment and what's going on around you. You also have to connect to your environment, to a community and to other people. You also have to really care about your connections. This is how you rebuild your internal architecture that you were born with. You can do this only when you go beyond your mind and the narrow limitations of your belief and ego.